Hey guys, welcome to my studio. It's Video Monday and I am so glad you're here. For those that are new, I am Bethany and welcome to my home studio in Texas. This month we've been studying canyon and southwest imagery and I am going to be painting this 11 by 14 canyon and cloud scene for you today. Now in recent months we've been talking about what I call paintings from the past, which means I'm taking a piece that I painted in the past and I'm recreating them for you guys to show you how paintings can develop, technique and style can also develop. Now this canyon and cloud scene is my painting from the past for this month, but with a twist. This was originally a small plein air painting that I created standing on the cliff at Paladuro Canyon, watching that gorgeous light streaming across. It was almost sunset. It was freezing cold. There were these rolling clouds off in the distance. And this right here, that orange, I remember pulling that out of my palette box thinking, I have never used this color before in any painting. And there it is right on the canyon wall. And so making those marks was so fulfilling and wonderful. I knew that I wanted to keep this little piece. I had some issues whenever I was painting this because it was really misty and freezing cold, and the water and the dampness of the air was actually making my paper a little wet. And so some of the marks that I made in the plein air painting, the pastel wasn't layering on the paper as well as I wanted, but I kept it purely for this color. I wanted to remember this moment, and so I've recreated it here for you guys while changing a little bit of composition. So I'm excited to paint this with you today. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Okay, you guys, I have my UArt taped onto my Becker board. This is about 11 by 14 on my favorite UArt grit, which is grit 500. It just really works for me, and a lot of people love 400 grit. It's a little rougher than this, but I just have gotten used to this 500 grit, and I have a giant roll of it, and I just roll it out on my floor, and I cut it into different sizes, and it works really great for me. Now I showed you the original plein air piece, and the interesting thing about that painting was that it was really, really cold in the canyon. It was October in the canyon whenever that was painted, and it was hovering around 15 degrees probably, and it was very misty. And I remember feeling like there was something wrong with my paper and my pastels because the pastel was just not sticking to the paper like it normally does. And really what I found out is that the paper was damp. It was damp from the fog and the mist in the air and just the very cold atmosphere. And so it was affecting how well the pastels were laying down on the paper. Of course, the other thing that I remember about it was whenever I pulled out that bright orange pastel that I talked about in the intro part of this video, how I had never used that color before. And then there it was right in front of me on the distant canyon wall. And so that was such a fun, exciting thing to paint. I'm referring to my plein air piece. I'm holding it in my left hand and looking down at it because I want to, of course, the whole point of a plein air piece often is to take that study back to your studio to then paint larger. So I'm looking at it and referring to it. I really want to capture the same sense of color and immediacy. It was cold. It was brutally just misty, and my hands were cold. I remember painting that original so well, and so I'm really wanting to recreate that painting in a larger format and also retain that sense of urgency that I had because I had to finish that piece because I was cold. I am blocking in, of course, the major shapes. You saw me do that with the pencil. Then I put it in the main canyon wall right there with blue, dark blue new pastel. And then this is some more neutral blue and also some very neutral pinks. This, doing a plein air piece will really help you with color. These are not colors that I would normally put together. And so plein air painting is so valuable for taking back to your studio, even if you're unable to do it very often. I don't get to do it as often as I would like, just having 3 kids at home. They're so busy, and there's so many things I have to take them to, and running errands and all kinds of that phase of life that I'm in, that I'm not as able to get out to the canyon and plein air paint as I would like to. But I value so much the few times that I get to go out and study the actual coloring, because it will tell you so much. You learn so much out in the field versus just doing things from your photographs. I'm washing in that it's almost a violet blue, kind of neutral pastel right there. That's a Mount Vision pastel. I just got a new set of blue Mount Visions, and I'm trying them out for the first time. Really, really loving not only their hardness. I tend to like the harder pastels a little bit more, so I'm loving those. I love the different value ranges, the different colors that are in that set, and I love how big they are. That is something, you get a lot of pastel for your money, so I'm having so much fun with that. I'm using that glazing brush just to whisk that pastel in, creating paint on that paper. And, as we go forward, I'm going to change the cloud shape a little bit. I'm trying right now to remain more true to my plein air reference. Eventually in this painting video, you'll notice that I decide to change things. And that often happens as well. You can take a plein air piece, you can try to, paint it as is, but that doesn't necessarily mean it makes the greatest larger painting, or a finished piece. It might need a slightly better composition to make the painting stronger, and that's what I decide as we go forward. But you can see right now I'm just swiping in alcohol to really cut in that very dark front formation of that mesa, or the canyon wall, I guess I should say. Really just trying to stay loose there. I'm also taking the same brush. I'm not applying any new pastel, or I guess additional pastel, I should say. I'm not applying additional pastel to that where there is going to be distant canyon. I'm just simply picking up a little bit of pigment. You can see that I just pick it up right there, and then I'm moving it over. I'm, really using the effects of this brush, especially it's a glazing brush. It's synthetic. It's really, really soft, and it moves that pigment around everywhere very nicely. Okay, so obviously it dried. You saw that instant drying, and I'm going to be scumbling on some light turquoises and some light greens to cut back into these clouds to help me start to form these formations in the sky. I remember there was kind of this unusual cloud in the sky. It was just this bank that was rolling across. There were lots of purples and pinks in the sky. And, this is whenever I was working on the original, the plein air, this is when I just could not get that pastel to lay down because my paper was damp with the cold. But I loved these colors, and I saved that plein air piece thinking, someday I might want to paint that larger because it was so compelling, the scene that was before me, and it was so much fun to paint, and colors that I wouldn't just pick out of a hat if I was painting on my own. Nature has its own way of ordering colors, and creating such beauty in front of us. So it was a joy to paint. I'm using that, that darker, more violet blue base as almost the shadows of the clouds. And then I'm cutting in a couple of different blues in the sky to help me just have a little bit of variation. Trying to let some of that original pink underpainting show through. Just tapping right here. I'm thinking about, okay, the sun is, coming from, it was setting in the west. This canyon wall faces the west, and so the light is coming from my right. And so, thinking about molding these these clouds, and so that they will look like, there are parts of them that are undulating, and they're rolling, and they're 3D. They're not just flat. And so some areas of them are going to be farther, reaching out farther towards the light than other areas. I'm working really quickly in this painting. That's how I like to work. Working quickly to me lends just a spontaneity to my mark making. And so the faster I work sometimes, the better the results, because I'm not overthinking. I'm just instinctively putting down color, making marks, and I'm not overthinking or trying to pick and be way, way too detailed. This is another Mount Vision that I'm putting down. I'm using a lot of Mount Visions in here since I just got them, and I'm so excited about them. And that is, you can see the value is slightly different than the foreground canyon wall. And I'm wanting to push that back a little bit. I'm not finished with the sky. Obviously, I haven't done anything with the mesa or the canyon wall over there on the left. Just kind of working on one area at a time right now. I'm going to add just a little bit of orchid pink new pastel underneath this cloud layer. Not really because I want that color to be very present, but there is kind of a purple undertone to my underpainting in that area. And so I'm just toning the paper a little bit. You can see that I'm pushing and softening some edges, and then I'm going to be layering over it. Oops, that one was a little too dark. You saw me put that down and think, nope, that's too dark of a value. So let's change that up a little bit. Gentle scumble, and just making sure I'm stepping back a lot, testing out my values and my hues to make sure that they make sense with each other. This pink that I'm using is a very grayed down pink. It's a neutral pink. It's not vibrant at all. That one that I'm using right now is a little bit more vibrant. I want to bring the vibrancy more down towards the horizon line. I had to switch sides real quick. It's really hard whenever I'm painting a bigger piece like this to be able to see it properly from both sides and not block the camera too much. Still kind of fine-tuning some shapes up there in the clouds, adding in really just very loose scumbling. I'm not trying to fill the tooth. I'm really not even trying to cover completely the color that's underneath it. I love that sketchier look. And this is a piece, if I had wanted to make it more of as the cloud formation is in the plein air piece, I would probably trim off that whole upper area of blues, because how the clouds are in the original, it's just more of a panorama. But I wanted to make it into a larger, more traditional size piece than just to have another panorama like I did last week in my live stream for you guys. And so I'm trying to make it work, and I'm still thinking about it right here. I'm going to start putting in some oranges, and I just put in some dark, very, very warm greens, because there are a lot of juniper and evergreen shrubs in the canyon, and they always stay green, and they will definitely be warm in this light. Now, of course, this orange, I remember when I was standing on that rim of the canyon and I pulled that out thinking, gosh, I have never used this color before, and then there it is. It was that vibrant. It was absolutely that brilliant. It was so much fun to use that. I don't think I would probably be bold enough on my own to use that color, but nature has a way of teaching us what it likes. I'm about to use probably the most vibrant, saturated, powerful colors that I have in my palette box. That is a Townsend Tirage. It is the 63 color. It's cadmium orange, and it is so bright and brilliant and powerful that it's almost hard to photograph. You can't even really capture how bright and brilliant it is. It's beautiful, and it was so much fun to use in this piece. I've used it before for some flowers, but using it in a bolder way to form this canyon, just this high part of the canyon was really fun. Pulling in some darker ochres right there. Of course, this canyon wall is very, very orange. We have a lot of clay soil in my region, and so there are areas of it that are more lit than others. And putting those oranges in really helps separate the foreground from that distant, those more distant canyon walls that I haven't really put in any detail yet. And right now I'm just having fun kind of carving in some high parts that are catching a lot of light and lower areas. I'm also putting in some greens here. Stepping back, you can see I'm trying to stay out of your way. It's hard, it's hard to reach over and do this without switching places in my studio. Right now, I'm just swiping in, putting in some of those, little junipers. I'll be adding a little hint of light to them as well. But first we have to form the bases of them, which are more shadowed. So still working dark to light. Putting in some little neutral blue on that canyon wall. And then I'm also going to start kind of carving in some distant canyon walls way off on that blue. I'm using the same color that I used up in the clouds. Basically, I'm just drawing little lines, horizontal lines, and then a slight angle downwards in the same, angle as this mesa. What that implies is that, yes, there are other canyon walls way, way off in the distance that are also receiving this light, but it's much, much more desaturated than what is closest to me. And that helps separate that foreground from the distance, while also having that area not be too boring. It gives it gives the eye something to look at and wonder about, and think, gosh, it's a big canyon. It's 100 miles long at least. There's tons and tons of wildlife in it. Really amazing, beautiful scenery and just gorgeous plant life as well. I'm a big, big fan, if you didn't already know that. And I feel very blessed to live nearby, so I can see these vistas pretty much anytime I want. I'm still working on some of that, kind of knocked down the value a little bit on some areas. I'm going to get out a coral Richardson right here. Not quite as powerful. This is where, it's a good lesson to think about, it's not necessarily just about having different colors in your palette box. It's also about having different hardnesses of pastel, because you can vary your mark making if you have more, a broad range of hardnesses. Right now, that Richardson is not nearly as soft as that Townsend and that really brilliant first orange that I put down. That was a Great American. Those are so bright and powerful that they lay down a heavy, heavy layer of pigment. The Richardsons are much harder, and so they tend to glaze over, almost, gently layering the pastel on top of what I had already put down. And so the mark is different. It creates a completely different feel in that area, and both are very valid and needed in a pastel painting. Deciding to go back and work on the clouds a little bit more. Really just stepping back, thinking about all of my marks. Here is where I begin to think, okay, I think I'm going to change what was originally in the plein air piece. You can see that I'm not looking down anymore at my left, because I've abandoned, I captured what I wanted to about that plein air piece, which was the color and that canyon wall. Now the painting exists on its own. It's become something completely different, and it's my job to create the best composition that I can. I keep looking back at the camera like, ooh, I need to get out of the way. I'm going to pull some of those blues up into and over that area that was much lighter to create more of a towering height over there on the left-hand side. I'm also still working with my Mount Visions. I'm really having fun with them right now. I'm going to pull in some more of this very, very neutral pinks. I don't necessarily want the pinks or even the blues that I'm pulling up to make them taller. I don't really want them to be as vibrant. I want the cloud to look like it's taller. You can see that I'm pulling all of that darker blue up and over that lighter sky color. But I don't necessarily want the whole thing to be as dominant, because I really want people to look more at the canyon wall. I just want to frame it a little better. Right now there's a ton of pastel on that lower area, so it's really easy to smooth and blend colors together. I don't want to make mud, but I'm using my fingers almost as little paintbrushes there and softening those edges, pulling it down into the lower edges, the lower, that lower cloud bank that's right above the horizon light. Now I'm going to pull my light turquoise pastel back out, cutting back into that blue that I swept up into that sky. That helps, there's just different areas. There's variation in the clouds when you do that. It's not just about putting, cloud color, sky color. You have to go back and forth often. Lots of soft edges. Right now I'm working on bridging the pinks down into the pink on the horizon line. I don't really want there to be stripes or lines of, there's the pink section and then there's the blue section and then there's another pink section and then there's the mesa. I want to, bring those elements together more fluidly. And so I'm working some of those pinks down into that light at the horizon. I'm also going to pull some of that pink, a little bit more dull pink. It's not quite that bright vivid pink or even that brighter value. It's just replicating that color up there in that upper atmosphere to help the painting flow. Some minor little touches happening here. I'm almost finished. This piece came together really, really quickly. It's, a fairly simple composition. There's not necessarily a lot of foreground grasses. I'm looking all the way across the canyon where I'm standing in this painting. And so there's, all of those details are not in this piece. And so it makes it a little easier and quicker to paint. Right now I'm experimenting with thinking, okay, there's orange light, or the light looks orange on that mesa or on that canyon wall. What if I added a little bit of orange to the clouds? This is something that after this video recorded, I decided I did not like. It just took too much focus up into the clouds versus being on the canyon wall like I wanted it to be in. And there was just kind of this weird vibration of that pink and that orange together that I decided I didn't like. But you guys are so lucky you get to see me put it on anyway. In another piece, it might be fine to put that in, but it just took it a little bit into a different direction than, I wanted it to with that plein air. It just brought a little bit just different, just color that I didn't enjoy up into the sky. But, thankfully, pastels are so forgiving. It's easy. I took a very, very, very large synthetic fan brush and just gently whisked off that fine layer of that orange, and it came right off, and I didn't have to repair anything at all. Just kind of scribbling and scumbling in some of that cooler blue sky color right now. This is, oftentimes when I try something like that, like putting in orange into the clouds, I think about it almost peripherally whenever I'm working on another area of the painting to see if I think it works. I'll take pictures of my, of the painting in my phone. If it's evening time, I will sit on the couch and I will look at that picture. I'll crop it. I'll see if I think that it looks finished, or if there's something that jumps out at me that I just don't like. And in this case, I knew pretty immediately. I was like, I don't like that orange. It's just too brilliant. It just takes away from the painting. I'm also going to knock down the right side of the horizon right here. I'm going to add a little bit of blue because that straight line, to me, it kind of took the eye too far out of my center of interest, which of course is the canyon wall and the clouds in and around it. And so I'm just softening some edges here with that pipe foam, being really careful with those last tiny little details. You can see me right here. I'm just still working a little bit on those distant walls. Pulling that, almost making a little triangle shape as it goes down into the canyon. Kind of experimenting here as well. I've never painted this except for that one beautiful October evening. And so it's been fun to delve back into those plein air studies. I'm going to add my black tape here. I'm actually conserving my black tape since I haven't been to the craft store in a while. I don't have any more, so I'm just pulling it off of my old paintings and reusing it, storing it kind of in these long strips. And here I can already kind of see like, I don't think I like the orange, but I knock that off later. And you can make sure and check out this, I don't have a reference image for this particular painting, but I do have my plein air piece posted, as well as the palette and the painting at Palo Duro that you can check out. I hope you have fun. I hope you had fun watching this. I have had a total blast painting all of these gorgeous canyon and Southwest images for you this month. We are for sure going to keep, paint more of them in the future because I have so many references that I want to share with you guys. And I feel like we just hit, we didn't even get to the tip of the iceberg about painting this type of just landscape. So make sure you check out the blog post about this to be able to see the step-by-step You can check out the palette and of course the finished painting. You can compare it to how it is now to see some subtle adjustments that I made after I finished recording. And look for a new painting video soon. Thank you guys so much for being here. I love, love, love being able to reach all of you from all over the world. You bless me with your art and your kindness and your encouragement, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much, and I'll see you around.